Well, good morning. As I was getting ready to record next week's Grim Dawn video, I happened to notice in the form a pinned note saying that Grim Dawn version 1.2 was coming November 16th, and that it is the most comprehensive free update ever. So, we'll take a look and see, because that sounds interesting. What things have they changed? And, oh my, what things haven't they changed? Because this post goes on forever and ever and ever. And I'll be honest, about 90% of the stuff I don't understand because I haven't played enough of the game to know most of this stuff. But let's take a look at some of the major new features. It says you can now play the entirety of the game up to the level cap on the difficulty that's enjoyable to you. To support this, level scaling has been updated on normal and elite difficulty. Many areas on normal now scale up to level 100. Elite difficulty now scales up to level 100 in all areas. Loot quality and experience gains remain higher on higher difficulties. Defeating the Log Horan on normal/veteran difficulty now unlocks elite and ultimate difficulty for that character. Note, this difficulty unlock is not retroactive. Players can proceed to the difficulty they feel most ready for. Completing a quest that grants skill or attribute points on higher difficulty, elite or ultimate, will now reward you the skill and attribute points from the lower difficulties as well. Example, completing Kasparov's Pocket Portal on ultimate will also grant skill points from the normal elite difficulty quest if you skip them. All loot tables have been overhauled with 30 to 60% less items dropping. I kind of have mixed feelings about that one, but let's finish. To compensate, loot quality and iron bit drops have been significantly increased. So, I kind of like getting all the drops because, well, I'm new. So getting more drops means I get more variety to try things out before I decide what I like. But at the same time, the loot quality has increased and the amount of iron bits have increased. So maybe that's a good trade-off. We'll have to find out once it goes live. All bosses now have 100% chance to drop their non-legendary monster infrequence. I have no idea what that is. A new base evade skill has been added, bound to spacebar by default. Evade interrupts any other action to immediately dash in the desired direction and offers a brief invulnerability window. Pause now defaults to P and the party window to K. Existing players will need to set a keybind or reset their keybinds in order to take advantage of this. Keybinds have been reset for Xbox players to accommodate this addition. So, there's a dodge. Yay! I don't know what to say, but yay! I like that change. I think I've actually mentioned a couple of times wondering if there was ability to dodge. Now there is. Health and energy potions have been removed from the game. The character now has potion skills baseline and does not need to keep them in their inventory. Dedicated potion buttons have been added to the quick bar. I'll have to see how that works. That almost sounds like what Diablo 4 did with potions. If it's that, I'm not really sure how I feel about that, because I really didn't like that part of Diablo 4. I actually prefer to have a stack of potions, but that's just me. Toggled buffs are now automatically toggled on and no longer need to be on the skill bar. Note, if your character currently has 2 exclusive skills learned, the one with more points invested will take priority. Again, I don't really know how I feel about that, although right now I think I only have 1 toggled buff. No, I have 2 of them. I'll have to look. I kind of like the idea that they don't have to be on the skill bar, but at the same time, I kind of really want to be able to choose which one I use. And I don't want the game to choose for me just because one has more points in it. You can now disable visuals for toggled buffs in the game option to improve visual clarity on your character and to show off all that gear. Interesting. New visuals have been added to alert you to legendary, monster infrequent, double rare, and double rare monster infrequent drops. Monster infrequents are now marked by an icon to separate them from standard rare items. I'm assuming I have not seen any of these particular items before, so it won't matter to me yet, but I'm sure I will appreciate knowing how to identify them easily when I do start seeing them. Monster health bar options have been improved. You can now toggle thicker health bars and display percent values for monster health. I don't necessarily need the percent values, but yay for being able to see the monster's health bar better. I appreciate that one. Monster health bar can now be toggled to also display all debuffs applied to the target monster. That's probably useful. The nullification mechanic, example, Arcane Heroes, has been overhauled. It now purges all temporary buffs and disables toggled buffs for 5 seconds. No more fumbling through your skill bars to turn auras back on. Again, not something I've run into yet, but I'm sure it's probably useful. New accessibility feature, disable day-night cycle. By enabling this, the game will perpetually set to noon. That's probably going to be useful for people who have trouble seeing in the dark. I might not use that. I kind of like the nighttime in the game. New accessibility feature, disable fog. If you do not wish to see the ambient fog, you can disable it in the video options. Again, good for clarity. I may or may not use it. We'll see. New accessibility feature, cooldown counters. Enable this to see a numeric countdown on your skills on the quick bar. Okay, that I will be using. Because to be able to see how long before I can use a skill again would probably help me to learn how to create some sort of rotation. New accessibility feature, auto pickup radius can now be increased or reduced from its default setting. Hello, I like that. I will take it. A new keybind has been added to hide the user interface for taking screenshots. Yay. Existing players will need to set a keybind or reset their keybinds in order to take advantage of this. Yay. I like that. I think I know which key I'm going to use. I'm pretty sure pause isn't used for anything in the game. I definitely like that one. So it goes on. There's a whole bunch of changes to something called Shattered Realm, including the exit portal mechanic has been overhauled for non-boss shards. Each player now receives their own personal portal at their current location that will take them out of the shard and into the next one. Okay, so that sounds like some sort of group activity. I think. I know nothing about Shattered Realm, but there's a new Eternal Waystone added that can take you up to shard 90 with rewards. Shrines have been redesigned with powerful new but temporary blessings, all which boost your maximum movement for their duration. These blessings no longer carry any penalties. Shrine offerings have been updated. That sounds like it's probably a good thing. Increased drop chance of shattered souls from champion enemies. Increased monster percent crit damage by 10% on ultimate difficulty. Increased monster health scaling on normal and elite difficulties, particularly at shard 60+. Reduced monster physical damage on elite and ultimate difficulties, particularly at shard 60+. Monster percent heal effects are now reduced in the Shattered Realm. The A Done Deal achievement now requires you to interact with each of the Shattered Realm shrines at least once, rather than having all 5 effects active at the same time. That sounds like it's probably going to be very useful for people who have or are doing this. The Bone Bleach special map has been disabled. It may return in the future after some much needed maintenance. Don't know anything about Bone Bleach, but taking something out does not sound good unless, of course, it is in bad need of maintenance. Say it's very buggy or just not very useful or fun. Reduced physical damage done by traps. Now, it just says reduced physical damage done by traps. It does not say traps that do damage to you or traps that you place that do damage to mobs. Okay, then we have Crucible, which again, I'm very, very new to the game, so I don't know anything about these. Reduce the number of non-boss monsters spawned in the Crucible. Waves 150 to 170 now have 6 mutators as a positive player mutator is now always rolled for the 5th mutator. Increase monster percent crit damage by 5% on gladiator difficulty. Monster percent heal effects are now reduced in the Crucible. Reduced tribute penalty for failing the event, particularly if failing after using a checkpoint. Ooh, so you have a penalty for failing. The tribute cap has been increased to 150. You have a penalty for failing. I'm not sure that's going to be something I want to do because I'm almost guaranteed to fail. Spawn areas no longer grant a movement speed buff to monsters. Nullification has been re-enabled in the Crucible at a reduced duration. Locksmere Night Mage's nullification remains disabled as it is an instant effect that cannot be dodged. Oh, that sounds good. Monsters now deal less physical damage in the Crucible on gladiator difficulty. Increased percent physical resist granted by the blessing of Ulo to 10%. Death chill beacons now cast Chilling Surge more frequently. I don't know what a death chill beacon is. Inferno beacons now cast Firestorm more frequently. Stonewall banners now cast Heal more frequently. Vanguard banners now cast Frenzy more frequently. And the Frenzy effect also grants percent max attack cast speed bonuses. So those sound like they are all to the player's benefit. Mod tools. There's a section on mod tools. The world map size limit has been increased from 2 gigs to 4 gigs. This should dramatically increase the size of mod maps you can create, but be aware that Crate will be using up some of that new space if you plan on modding the campaign map. The console now logs Lua errors in custom games. Faction slots have been expanded to 40. Note that Crate will be using these up through 18 in the near future. Who can say beyond that? So plan accordingly. Skill modifier slots on items have been increased to 6. Localization has been integrated into the game data. You can alter localizations within your mods by overriding and updating these files. Added bool item.isType object ID for checking if an entity is an item within Lua functions. A new pet modifier template has been added that can override all 4 of the Ray Skeleton pet arrays. So these are all tools for people who create custom maps and other mods for the game. So yay for mod support. That means there might be some fun mods coming out. I'll have to look those up. I think the only mod I've gotten is the one that makes the game look like Diablo 2. Art. Rock textures have been modernized across the game, particularly in the base game regions. So we'll have to look and see if I notice a difference in how the rocky terrain looks. Tech. Fixed an issue where the Arcane Bomb Celestial Power was not refreshing if reapplied. Fixed some issues with assigning Celestial Powers to movement skills granted by Augment runes. Fixed an issue where putting skill points in a modifier that grants pet bonuses would not refresh until the ability was recast. And fixed an issue where refreshing Trap and Freeze crowd control effects would ignore their respective resistances and be applied at full duration. That sounded like it might have been a bug. Okay. Game. Difficulties have been rebalanced to account for the ability to play up to level 100 on all difficulties. Normal difficulty is a little harder as you approach level 100 in all game modes to smooth out the transition to higher difficulties, while Elite and Ultimate difficulties are now easier at level 1 to 50 for new characters using merits. Okay, so it sounds, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you could not get up to level 100 on normal difficulty, but now you can. But in order to make a more seamless transition from a normal difficulty to a higher one, they're making the mobs, as you approach level 100, a little harder. I think that's right. It sounds good. You can now select your desired main menu theme in the game options. I'll have to check that out when the update downloads. A new monster mechanic has been added, Sundered. Many bosses can now sunder your defenses, causing you to take X% additional damage for Y seconds. Multiple instances of Sundered do not stack. Only the strongest effect is active. Multiple instances of Sundered, yeah, okay. I read that already. That sounds like it's going to be challenging, for me at least. All mutators no longer have negative effects. Many mutators have been redesigned. Monster mutators that granted resistances no longer do so. Positive player mutators are now always rolled for the second and fifth mutators. I'm not sure what that one is about. I mean, I understand it, but not in the context of the game. Maybe because I've not run into much of that yet, or any of that. Challenge areas have had their loot quality and difficulty increased. Okay. Reduce the minimum chance to hit to 55% from 60%. This is an indirect buff to defensive ability stacking. Hero monster archetypes, example, burning, swift, etc., have had their special abilities updated and buffed. The most dangerous hero archetype now have more prominent visuals to distinguish their presence. Bounty hero monsters that use a hero archetype now correctly include their archetype in their name. Many vanilla Grim Dawn monsters have received a bump to their various abilities to bring them up to speed to modern standards. Oh dear. Okay, so a little more challenging. Gonna have to actually be a little more tactical in the game. Stun, freeze, and petrify effects have been removed from most standard non-hero/boss monster abilities. Oh, so that's a nerf to the monsters. Increase the health of most bosses at low levels. Like they weren't already bullet sponges. This change has a minimal impact on in-game boss health with the exception of some vanilla bosses that had underpowered health pools compared to their expansion counterparts. This change does not apply to the Crucible. Reduced monster bleeding resistance on Elite and Ultimate difficulties by 3% and 4% respectively. Reduced monster vitality resistance on Elite and Ultimate difficulties by 4% and 8% respectively. Monster auras no longer grant percent damage absorption unless it is their explicit purpose to be a defensive aura. Example, Defender Heroes, Outlaw Skirmishers. This will prevent scenarios where overlapping auras can make monsters unusually tanky. Some auras had their other bonuses buffed to compensate. Monster abilities no longer apply percent resistant reduction and flat resist reduction. Unique monster debuffs that reduce resist continue to do so. Many monster special attacks, particularly melee and breath attacks, now stop tracking the player's movements past a certain point, making it easier to evade these attacks. Oh, that'll be good. There are plenty of monsters that were a little hard to evade. Many monster special attacks, particularly those that apply Sunder, have had their animation speeds reduced. Monsters with charge abilities are now slower when charging and have a finite pursue range. Okay, that one I like because I know of a few monsters that were super fast and just followed forever. Increased monster percent life leech resist. This makes percent attacks damage converted to health less effective. On ultimate difficulty, this is roughly a 30% reduction against an average boss. Defensive healing abilities and constellations have received a buff to compensate for this change. Okay, so if you're using life leech, it's not going to be as effective. Okay. Percent damage reduction debuff effect no longer reduces the intensity of other debuffs. Example, reducing how much percent slow a monster's attack applies. This was already the case for the new Sunder mechanic and is now consistent for older debuffs. Reflected debuff effects, example, Sunder percent damage reduction, etc., are now applied at up to 30% intensity. Wendigo type monsters have had their zoomies reined in and no longer approach you at the speed of sound. Oh, that's a good one. I like the way they worded that. Monster health now scales more appropriately in multiplayers. Mutators that affect monster health are now more clear as to how much percent health they provide. Okay, so that will make it more challenging for multiplayer. That's usually a pretty good thing. Remove defense against pets from celestial bosses. Defense against pets. which means your pets are a little more useful against these bosses. Triple the rate of infamy gained with the outcast faction when choosing to be hostile. Double the rate of fame infamy gained with Kaiman's Chosen and the Order of Death's Vigil. I don't know who any of these things are. Pets now default to an aggressive stance rather than normal stance. The setting can still be toggled on a pet-by-pet basis as desired. Good. Because honestly, when I have pets, like in Lotro, I prefer them to be defensive rather than aggressive, because aggressive pets usually just go after everything and then get you killed. Increased drop rate of mana core eyes from hero and boss monsters and their corrupted counterparts. Leap and charge through, example Buyer's Might, type attack can now be bound to left click. Skill tooltips in the skill tree window now display detailed skill point investment info. How many points the mastery plus how points from items. There is now also an overcap warning if your skill exceeds the ultimate skill point cap. Now that's useful because I would have no clue what the ultimate skill point cap is. So a little warning going, yeah, you don't want to spend all those points here because you'll exceed that. And then, you could really use those points somewhere else instead. Yeah, that's useful. More attributes have been added to the character sheet, mainly percent reflect, resistance, and additional pet attributes. Now that is a whole ton of stuff right there. And it goes on because there's a whole section on itemization. There's a whole section on faction items, one on relics, which I kind of wish it would just tell me what relics did. A whole section on monster infrequents, which is gigantic. A section on epic items. A section on legendary non-set items. And it goes on forever and ever and ever, as you can see. Then there's a section on legendary set items, which of course none of these I've even come close to seeing yet. Classes and skills. Toggled buffs no longer have an energy upkeep. Some energy regeneration constellations have had their energy regeneration reduced, and various mastery abilities had their energy costs increased to compensate. Okay, toggled buffs no longer have an energy upkeep. That part I understand, because I use a toggled buff, although the energy upkeep on it wasn't really that much. Some energy regeneration constellations have had their energy regeneration reduced, so they provide less energy regeneration, and various mastery abilities have had their energy cost increased, so they use more energy to compensate. We'll have to see. I'll have to see how that works out. Reduced armor of the high armor pets, blight beans, briar thorns, and chillmanes, to bring them more in line with average pets. But it sounds like that they were supposed to be high armor pets, and they were supposed to be tankier than average pets. So you're nerfing them. I think that's one of those few things I don't agree with. Don't nerf a pet's ability if that is their main function, is to be a tank. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know. Increased health scaling with level for all pets by 9%, with a few exceptions that received up to a 30% increase. Okay. And then there's a whole section on devotion, which I'm actually going to have to read through because I'm still learning devotions. I have no clue what I'm doing there. There's sections for each of the classes. So there's stuff for the soldier. There's stuff for the demolitionist. So what did we change in the demolitionist? Blackwater Cocktail increased duration scaling with rank to 4.5 seconds by rank 12, 6.5 seconds by max ultimate rank. High Potency removed duration bonus. Flash Bang increased energy cost scaling with rank. Mortar Trap reduced cooldown to 2.5 seconds. Temper increased defensive ability scaling with rank to 120 by rank 12, 220 by max ultimate rank. And the Vindictive Flame increased health regeneration scaling with rank. I think I used Vindictive Flame. Okay. So there's a whole section for the occultist, for the nightblade, for the arcanist, for the shaman. I'm trying to think. No, I don't have a shaman. For the inquisitor. Okay, so this is the other side of mine because I'm a purifier. Bursting round increased base percentage weapon damage by 15%. Chilling rounds increased base percent weapon damage by 5%. Inquisitor Sill increased energy cost scaling with rank. Null field redesigned to support two-handed weapon playstyles. Okay, because sometimes I do use a two-handed weapon. Stormbox of Elgaloth increased duration to 8 seconds. Lightning Tether, maximum tethers increased to 5. Storm Spread increased base percent weapon damage by 3% and increased electrocute damage scaling with rank. And Word of Renewal increased duration to 60 seconds, increased energy cost and heal scaling with rank, increased percent heal scaling at ultimate ranks. Okay, I'm not sure how most of this is going to affect my character. Again, I'm still pretty new. I'm assuming these are good things. If anybody runs a build with an Inquisitor, let me know how good or bad these changes are. Necromancer, of course, he has actually Necromancer got a big, huge section. Oathkeeper. Oathkeeper actually probably had the smallest section of all. Yeah. And that's it. So there's a big, huge pile of stuff to unpack in this update. And for a game that's like 8 or 9 years old, to get an update like this with this many changes is pretty rare. I would have to say that the developers really, really, really love their game if they're willing to go through all this. But let everybody know in the comments below. What do you think of the changes? And, well, were any of them particularly good or particularly bad? Until next time, bye for now.